Tony, welcome to the Tony Robbins podcast. It's a pleasure to have you. It's a treat to be on your own podcast. I never thought I'd be sitting across from you.
We have a very special guest today on the Tony Robbins podcast. It's the one and only Tony Robbins.
Oh my gosh. Well, I feel really privileged to be on this podcast, with the two of you especially. Listen, I know it's a Father's Day podcast, and I know you guys are going to do the bulk of this because I guess that's what you promised. You did Mother's Day, right?
We did indeed. And
I love that one.
Yes, thank you. And on that podcast, we actually committed to, it just felt imbalanced to only do one perspective. And so thank you for joining us because we wanted to get from your eyes and your perspective. Obviously, we're not fathers.
Yeah, but you both have amazing fathers, obviously. Some present still, some present from a distance on the other side in Mary's case. But both your fathers have had a big impact on me as well.
And just getting a sense, Tone, like what does it mean to you to be a father? And can you speak on the father principle that's really alive in all of us as an attribute?
Well, I think the father's job is one of the most important jobs on earth, other than a mother's probably. I think it's unique. Everyone has their own idea of what that looks like. I think the most important thing, if you're listening on Father's Day, first of all, happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. I send you all my love because I know what that means, and I know we've all been shaped to some extent. And some people have been shaped because the father relationship was not a great one. Some people barely know their fathers. Some people have very harsh relationships with fathers. Some have very loving relationships. So some are close, some are distant. And I don't pretend to be an expert, but I do have the great privilege and blessing of being a father to five and a grandfather to five. So at least I have some experience on the job. And at different stages of my life, too, where I got several of my children all at once, which is a unique experience of life. But I think, the father role, as far as I'm concerned, it has two sides to it. Anyone can be a parent, anyone can have a child. But I think there's a difference between being a father and even being a dad, to me, in my world. A dad is a really beautiful and fun experience. A dad you can be the friend to your kids, but I think a father is someone who loves their child so much that you're willing to risk losing their love in the short term in order to serve them. And so I look at father to me as a position of love and strength, like absolute unconditional love beyond imagination, so that they know that no matter what happens in their life, you're always in their corner. But a strength to call to the higher part of any stage of a child's life, even I'm discovering now, even at the toddler stage, so that their life actually manifests into something that they're proud of and magnificent. It doesn't mean putting your approach to life or your, tattoo on your child, because I don't think that's what a father does. I think a father is someone who's acutely aware of that each child has different gifts and each child needs a different kind of support and each child needs a different kind of challenge. And so being a warm, loving, strong father to me is a figure that's important. And it's not because, I've had so many great role models, as you know, honey,
Yes, you've had multiple fathers. And
yes.
Can you just share your own relationship and how that shaped you as a human being? There's many listeners out there that, possibly, have had challenges with their own father figure or lacking of a father figure. And you certainly had a unique constellation. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure, I'd be happy to. That was very articulate.
This is fun.
This feels very formal the way you're doing this.
Sorry.
Boy, what have you done to her, Mary? She's become a formal journalist here.
I'm sweating.
I really am straighter than usual on this episode. I'm holding my breath. I haven't taken one breath yet.
No, honey, I think for those listening, some of you may know some of my history, but I don't go through bore everybody with the details. But I had a unique upbringing, and then I have a very powerful mother, very strong, very intense. And a huge part of who I am today was shaped by her. But I also had four different fathers because I had such a strong mother.
Yes.
She ran the show. And it shaped me in different ways. My natural father, who gave me the gift of life at birth, along with my mother, I was never really super close to. I never really related to him as a father. He was a good man. He worked hard. And a lot of how I see him, I know was probably shaped by my mother. And I think it's important for mothers out there to know what a role you play in seeing how the father's perceived.
That's so true.
In your case, Sage, your daddy was not there a good period of the time. And some of your siblings looked at that as he wasn't there for me. And you looked at it as he's working his butt off for the family. And I don't know how much your mom played a role in that. I think she did play a role, didn't she?
Hugely so. That Absolutely. Her own narrative was, dad is really in service to the family. He's taking care of us. He's supporting from that perspective. So I didn't have that disjointed perspective that of his absence. So I do believe that my mom's narrative on that definitely shaped my own perception of that reality. And that's a really valid point, Tony.
Because it can also be shaped positively. Sounds so funny how you call me Tony.
Oh, well,
You never call me Tony.
I don't, but we are on the Tony Robbins podcast.
Is a real interview. Stop laughing,
All right,
everyone.
I'm taking this officially then.
Order.
Tony.
Okay, Tone.
All right, sweetheart, I love you.
I love you too. Thank you.
No, but I think that's important to point out because to be fair to my natural father, my mom was so dominant and was so close. I think she shaped my view of him to a great extent. And I'm happy about how I came out, so to speak, as a result of a whole complex set of interactions. But my natural father was a parking attendant. He worked for 50 years underground. It was before, having little automated systems to, get your ticket. And he would he'd sit there and read the newspaper and take people's money all day long. And as a young boy, when I first went, I remember being excited to go with him just to be at my dad's work at a really young boy. But my mom's view of that, she had a negative frame of him. And so I think I developed a negative frame about him. I don't think I know. And also that she left him when I was really young, when I was, 7 years old. And I remember at the time of calling me in and saying, you probably know what this meeting's about. And I had no clue. And they said, well, we're getting a divorce. And I was shocked because my mother and father didn't really argue that much. My mom argued, but my father didn't. My father was an alcoholic, but not a mean alcoholic in any way, my natural father. But there was just no relationship with him. He'd come home and he'd be drunk and he'd watch TV. He wasn't into sports. We did share, a love of history. I have a love of history. Maybe he planted that seed in me. I don't know, probably. And so that was the one thing we shared in common, but that was about it. I really couldn't tell you much about him. He was a very internal man. Wanted to be a movie star, was in the movie business. That's how he and my mom met, I guess, and kind of B-movie situation. Didn't quite make that. But he was a good man and he was a attractive man, but he wasn't a very strong man. And I think a huge part of who I became was to not be like that. And that's not trying to be disrespectful to him anyway, just trying to be honest as to how I think it shaped me. And again, I don't know that it's fair because it was a big part of through my mother's eyes. So she got up and left with my little brother, 5 years younger, and my little sister, 7 years younger. And I was